Hey everyone.
So I've been thinking about this week, and I was talking to Tam today, and just after that financial working group conversation, the SAPO working group, Gideon, I just been thinking so much about how are we leading, how how are we dealing with the structural part? How are we dealing with operations? Are our operations moving in the direction of our mission, or we need some type of grounding, like a shake now that will bring us back to the root and have the chance to reevaluate if things took a life of its own and they are going into different directions, which is very natural. And I think a beautiful thing about the DAO space, and what is essential, like how can we start seeing what we're doing based on our mission and be able to um, offer a path for the things that are leaving the boundaries of our mission. And I think it's great because Aloysius did some work on boundaries in the mural board, and then it's a good segue for talking about this, I think. So I just wanted to, yeah, read our mission, vision, and values. So, and then I would like to hear each one of you talking about your feelings of like how do you sense the TC in in face of our MVV? How are you feeling like we're doing? What is your personal understanding of it? So keep that in mind for now. So our goal is to become a Schelling point for the token engineering community. And a Schelling point, I don't know if everyone is aware, but is the meeting point, like the place I go to meet token engineers without even having to talk to them about meeting there, like the place where everyone gathers on this topic. So becoming the Schelling point for token engineering, our economic layer will fund projects that discover, develop, and proliferate the best practices for engineering safe tokenized economies while aligning our collective success with the individual benefit of token holders. Our social layer is even more important, and it will unite the token engineering field around the ethical principles, standards, tools, and methodologies that emerge as this nascent field advances. Our vision is to enable the creation of ethical, safe, resilient, and diverse economic systems to benefit societies around the world. And our comments operate from a pro social, human centered perspective and prioritizes the advancement of token engineering over short term profits. Integrity, curiosity, constructive inquiry, presence, and gratitude are foundational for maintaining mutual respect within our growing community. We encourage our members to be radically open source, non hierarchical, transparent in their intentions, and accountable for their actions. So, in your opinion, how are we doing on this on our mission, vision, and values? And
Can I
I'll
ask a question?
pass. Yeah,
There was a part where you said discover, develop, and there was something else. It was part of the like your mission for like finding new projects or whatever, like discovering them and developing. There was one more word after that, but I couldn't remember.
proliferate.
Thank you.
I will add this to the agenda here. Would you like to start, Aloysius?
Yeah, will you repeat your question?
How are we doing in our achievement of our mission, vision, and values? Like how is our okay, so maybe another point for context. I think with the data analysis that we'll start having, we'll start to understand what is the actual mission of our community right now, the one that is happening at the moment. And the MVV is an utopian mission, right? Is one that we are like dreaming of, is one that we like crafted together and we came up with this, but we are hopefully in practice achieving this mission, but we might not be. And this is my point now. Like, where are we actually? And then having this as a direction we want to move towards and understanding where we are, how can we build that bridge that will take us there?
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna say the things that I heard that are happening, that I believe are happening, that come out of the utopian vision. That part that said discover, develop, and proliferate. I have to look up proliferate again just to get a better grasp of how that's being used here. But I'd say that the sorry, Livy, can you mute yourself? Thank you. I'd say that the thing that's happening with being able to vote on a DAO to basically be like kind of incubated, I think, is what I'm perceiving. For the Token Engineering Commons to sort of help a community like start their own economy. That seems like a big part of that piece, that discover, develop, um, that is coming through. And then
Are
our
you,
social.
sorry, just a question there. Are you talking about the Common Stack prize or?
Oh yeah, isn't that kind of okay? I feel like maybe I could be wrong here. I feel like Common Stack is part of token engineering, but not necessarily. I could be wrong here. I see an overlap in the ecosystems with the common stack technology being something that's stewarded through a lot of participants that are in the commons but other communities. I kind of see that as like stuff together. Am I wrong?
I think that's an interesting perception, is something we wanted to have a more clear separation between Common Stack and TEC. So it's a good feedback that is still coming across as something that is kind of the same thing, as if like the Common Stack was, as if the Commons Prize was an initiative from the TEC, right, to create new economies.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah, I felt
the
like it was
yeah.
coming from common stack, but it's all the people that are in tech that are like doing it more. Yeah, I don't know. I
Okay,
see a
yeah,
blend.
that's good. That's good feedback. So, yeah, just to clarify, the Common Stack and Common Stack supported the creation of the TEC in the same way that will support the creation of a new commons. That is what's the Commons Prize is about.
Okay, but that's not tech. That's okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Well, then never mind. Scratch that. It looks like that's happening, but in a different way. Um, the social layer being the most important piece was a piece that stood out. My first thought was like prove it. That was my thought, was like prove it, prove it. Um, but I also know that, and I think why I said prove it was because I can see the things that we're doing now that really show that it's like all the stuff that we've said and done and the rituals and practices. But then the prove it is the like what are we doing now that like that stuff's like built? How are we reinstilling the things that are here for like new people, I think. Uh what else? Oh yeah, no, I'm good. I'm gonna pause. I have something else that came up, but it's not on the question you asked. I'm good.
Do you want to pass it to someone?
Oh, yeah. I also want to say the shelling point piece. The storytelling is getting a lot better, and the people coming in knowing that this is the place for the people or whatnot for token engineering, I feel like that's happening. So I'd say that's working. I feel like people know this is where it goes down. Yeah. How about NT?
Sure, thanks. So, uh, this is the first time I read the mission, vision, and values, and really, I think we are on the right track. Um, I'm liking a lot, like everything that's happening, all the discussions we're having. I think they are like online with what's proposed on the MBV. Um, I guess on the meta on a higher level, uh, we are still early, but I feel like at least myself as an individual, I feel like I've learned a lot, and uh, like what's expressed in the MBB highly resonates with me in the context of the TEC. So I would say we're good, really. And I'll pass it on to Franca.
I like our mission, vision, values. Identify with them, and I think there's awareness about them. Mm, maybe I would say
I don't,
as Senti that we are
sorry,
early. Yeah.
sorry, Juan. I don't know if you were here for the question or if
How
more
are we doing?
people jumped in. Yeah, just how are we like in like do you think we are achieving the MVV? Sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted
No.
to.
Yeah, I think we are. In fact, I think that we are developing and proliferating safe economies. I think that we are supporting projects, and that's super cool. And we are still working on the social layer. The other day, I talked something with Durgadas, and it comes to my mind again. And it's that the cultural build is not something that we build and it's done, and but the cultural build is a continued evolution, and it's something that continues to be building. So it's like a cultural building, and it's not like, yeah, we build something and now it fixed. The cultural is something that continues and that goes with the culture and with the community. um but yeah, I think we are getting there. Maybe for the shelling point part, there's still also this kind of um difficult separation between the TEC and the TE Academy, and sometimes people think and go more for the hard skills on the TE Academy, but maybe we can do a better side on that token engineering side for the for the shelling point. But I think we're doing good, and I'll pass to Gideon.
Thanks, Wonka. Yeah, I mean, first of all, every time I listen to the mission values and vision, it makes me happy. I love that vision, um, and I feel like the way I would describe it is, it feels to me like we're building a giant engine for some vehicle that um, is not here yet, right? So we're really over investing. Some people would see it as over investing, right? A lot. The criticism is, oh, maybe the TEC is like putting too much focus on process and things like that. But I think it just depends on what, how big you think we're going to be and how important we are going to be. I personally believe this is going to be a very important organization. So these kinds of capacity building investments are worthwhile. Um, but sometimes, like right now, it does feel like we're kind of maybe over investing in operations, and so that we're kind of losing sight of the mission as as we do that. But I have faith that that's going to come back. Like I do. I think that as long as we keep talking about them, we in everything that we do, we circle back to this, the how the MVV relates. I think we're going to be okay. And the last thing I'd add is like I feel like that tethering to the MVV is something that probably needs to happen at like two levels at least. One is like at an individual level, when people are onboarded and just the ongoing kind of like development of people over time, like that just keeps like that's a big part of ongoing education. And then also the working groups, like making sure that the working groups um, really understand their role in contributing to the MVB. And you know, this is not the time or place to go into this, but the nonprofit and philanthropic sector has done like really good work on impact evaluation tools to help mission-driven organizations stay aligned with like figuring out how to affect change in the world. And I think that's something that we should come back to at some point. There are these really cool tools like theories of change, like a theory of change or logic models that could be very useful for us in making sure that we stay aligned. So I'll stop there. Let's go to Gene. Do you want to go?
Thank you for checking in. Yeah, I really like what everybody has said so far. I'm delighted that this is the question today because I've been thinking about this for quite some time, and I apologize that I haven't really voiced those thoughts or opinions, but now's a good time to start. So the first thing that comes to mind when the mission, vision, and values is I was going to draw up a post called Shelling Shilling, because that's kind of part of what happens here is that in some sense we utilize the concept of the Shelling point, which is a great concept for being a place to come and discover and develop these practices, but I want to say that, and I could be incorrect, but that a Shelling point is not only a place to come together for a topic, but for a directive or a purpose of some sort to accomplish something. And that's where the rest of the mission is elaborated. But for me, that there's a kind of a critical misconception that's taking place in terms of we've elaborated on the economic layer and the social layer, but in some sense we're missing the technical layer, which is what many people come in the door to the Token Engineering Commons looking for, is technical assistance for their own projects, and we typically turn them away. And that's not so that we say that you have to go somewhere else, but we don't really have something for that interest and that use case, and people get discouraged naturally when they realize that help, that technical understanding or that technical assistance is not going to be forthcoming, that we're focused on building our own community versus building anybody else's community. And that's fair enough, but that's a common misconception that takes place. And in terms of the economic layer, I think that it's probably important to differentiate, not probably, but it is important to differentiate between the economic layer and the finance layer. I think that we're not focused on the economics of token engineering in that sense, and that we're focused on financing efforts for token engineering. And there's a critical differentiation there that needs to take place. And along what Wonka was indicating, where we were having a discussion the other day with Durgadas, and Aloysius and Durgadas and I were having a further discussion about it, that there's something to be said for sort of even though the cultural layer is so critical, there's something to be said for a counter cultural layer, so to speak, and that's I think probably the biggest point of what Livy is indicating here is that we're trying to reevaluate how well we're doing and be honest about it. And if we can't make a space for disagreement or just voicing taboo opinions or something directly in opposition to what we're trying to accomplish with the cultural layer, then we're going to be making some critical mistakes or just have a poor perspective on external ideas. And for that to come up in gravity is probably the right place, because if gravity can't make space for dissent and for differing opinions, then where else can we have a space for that? So I'll tie it up there. And it's empty.
Thank you, Gideon. I sorry, Jin. I actually agree with what you were saying, and for me, like the moment, like the TC was at its peak as doing, this my vision at least of the TC according to the MBB. It's like when we were doing param parties and everyone was coming to the TC, was learning about tokenization, building economies, and I feel like this is something like we're really missing right now. Yeah, I don't have much to add, but I really miss like people coming to the STC just to learn tokenomics and build. Uh, I don't know. I'll pass it to you, Libby.
Thank you. This was all really great inputs. I love the countercultural layer concept. I think we definitely need to have space for a counterculture within our culture, and that's the only way we can um, continue to evolve and to raise things that are not working that well. And I think we have set a great ground for like for criticism to be constructive. I think we've been working on ourselves and the way we communicate to make sure that criticism is not like just harsh, or that we're not looking at the good side, or that we're not like integrating all the learnings. So I think we are prepared for a little bit more of criticism and dissent and reevaluating our standings. And I agree with you. I think this metaphor is really great, Gideon, that we're building a giant engine for a vehicle that has not arrived yet. And just getting a little bit on this topic because I hear it coming from all sides in the community of like, oh, token engineering project, people with projects are here for like consultancy or for receiving information about token engineering, and we're sending them away. I think we need to like consciously, yes, talk about it and build capacity. And something that I think is very present for me is that we can't really offer consultancy, but we can partner with projects that can. And what we could do is do a certain filter of like how projects that are approaching us, how can we help them shape what they actually want? And I think token engineering is so like in an infant phase that it's hard for projects to even understand what they want, what they need, what type of expertise they're looking for, what questions they need to solve. And this first process is probably something we can help with. And we should talk to Longtail Financial, that is YGG's firm that has been offering the services, and understand how we can help them and how we can help TE Academy. And just to your point too, Juan, of like TE Academy being the Shelling point, I don't think should ever like compete with this position of the TE Academy. They are like our biggest partners probably, and it's just about like how to build a Schelling point where like the TEC and the TE Academy are so integrated that we're all benefiting from the skills that are in all these projects, right? Does anyone has any last
So
comment before we move on to?
yeah, if I may, directly along those lines of the differentiation between the various aspects of the ecosystem, and specifically with respect to what Aloysius was saying, it's really difficult to differentiate them. And I know that I had a moment when I was bringing up the grant process for Optimism that was a few months back, and I was speaking about it with Tam. I I not that she meant to, but I was made to feel kind of stupid for not understanding the difference between, and not just stupid, but afraid that I made some sort of significant mistake because I submitted an application that, in the wording, kind of implicated that Common Stack and TEC were the same thing, and that's not correct, obviously. So there's a differentiation between these different aspects of the ecosystem and companies, or how we even describe the difference between a group like Common Stack and the DAO that they've built or contributed to building or provided consultancy to build. And when that separation isn't clear for everybody, it can be a real turnoff in terms of being walking away feeling like, well, I'm just not fit for this type of intellectual effort. I don't understand, and so I'll never understand, or I'm too stupid to participate in this. And that's not true. It's just negative ideation, but it's really important to recognize that not everybody, basically maybe nobody, is going to understand these boundaries and these differences the way that anybody who's been participating in this group for a long time has a clear kind of a separation between them. It's important to recognize that. So
Thank you. That's a good segue to jump into boundaries. Aloysius, do you want to take it? I will share the board.
I just had a little daydream there when I was imagining like people coming to us for support and consultation. You ever seen the movie theaters when they're like a trip to the movies? I had this like thing where it was like, so you want to make a DAO, and it was like all in black and white, and it was cartoon, and it was like this like animation walking through all the different considerations. Like, cool, so you want to make NFTs, and then it throws up all this stuff. Anyways, I was just thinking of a checklist for all the things because I consult left and right on so many different things, but I have to pull resources from everywhere to help people. And yeah, anyways. I'm trying to find that on my computer so that I can look at it.
I pasted in the agenda.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ruby Tuesday. I'm trying to make it so I can like maybe present or something.
Yeah, you can share your screen. There is, I think.
Okay. All right. So I'll start by saying what I did was I was reading through the stuff that was over on the left. I started seeing clearly defined boundaries. And I've kind of been saying this like for a while, is that I genuinely don't think a lot of people like in society understand like boundaries, what they are. And I think that has everything to do with the type of like cultures that we're exposed to, and the social, like the way it is socially in our world. I wish I was better at articulating these things, but I'm learning how to communicate about it. So please ask questions. I recently learned about boundaries. I went through a period in my life where I didn't know anything about boundaries. I like heard people had boundaries, and then I started asking friends, "What are your boundaries?" And then people couldn't answer me things, and then some people would tell me things, and their boundaries sounded like some ultimatums that I've heard before throughout my relationships and relating with people and being in harmful circumstances. And then I started taking some consent classes and learning more about like articulating boundaries and what those actually were. And that's when I came to learn that boundaries were like about time and about how whether or not you have access to resources or whether or not someone has access to your energy, be it emotional or intellectual. And I started to see the ways that all of those things kind of play into our social interactions. And if I didn't actually know myself and know what my boundaries were in any of those given circumstances, I couldn't actually be standing grounded in my autonomy. I'm doing things to like make somebody else happy or to get my needs met, etc. That's not grounded in my actual authentic boundaries. So when I read stuff from Eleanor Ostrom talking about boundaries, I also got the feeling that she didn't necessarily understand them either. Like knew that they were important, but didn't know that they apply to absolutely every part of the rest of the framework. And I guess that's why I've been wanting to like bring boundaries up. I'll scoot back over. So I was sitting with this concept of boundaries as prohibitions, and I think of prohibitions and laws and all of these things. My whole life, I've been told to question these, whereas a lot of my friends have grown up knowing that those things support their safety and their like well-being. And I know that almost all the rules that are out there are in place for certain reasons, and they don't actually benefit me. So with concept of thinking about boundaries as prohibitions and our language and sort of like the spells we're casting and the energy and nuance, it didn't feel like prohibition was like right. I felt like we needed more comprehension of what boundary means. So I wrote down the types of, this is work from Faith G. Harper. She's got a whole bunch of alphabets behind her name, incredible human being that works with this gentleman named Joe out of Oregon. They have a zine company, and they publish content that's really hard to find in any medical books. Like everything is like outside the norms of stuff that's written, and it's really, really speaking to like the cultural nuances of society between the medical stuff that's out there. You know, you have like people who are insecure or activated or have had bad experiences, or all the different ways you could be around the like medical system. There's a lot of nuances in there that don't allow for people to get like care through those systems. And what they're doing is they're writing stuff that's not like activating people and giving them actual resources to the things they need to learn about themselves. But when I, oh shoot, sorry. When I look at all these different types of boundaries, I see the ways that some of these can leak into like all the things we're doing as we're moving around and coordinating. And I like question how grounded people are in their comprehension of these, because I feel like it's gonna impact kind of everything, because these control people's behavior and like what they do. And if they aren't aware of what their boundaries are, and their behavior could be like whatever, they're just getting their needs met, they're kind of on autopilot. I'd have a preference for having people being grounded and being at a place of choice and operating from there at every moment. But I don't think it's possible without true understanding of like consent and boundaries and having it kind of embedded in our framework. I feel like I blamble and ramble and don't know how to like connect the dots with the things that I'm seeing in the overlays. But I put some questions down at the bottom that I was thinking about when I think about how all this ties into DAO operations. And I was wondering, how do boundaries apply within communities? Because as I'm looking at emotional, intellectual, time, property, physical, those are kind of the main primary ones that we'll see in these digital working spaces. I'm like, who's talking about these things? Who's like we all have boundaries, but none of us know what they are. How are we even like working with one another without knowing these things about each other? Like, and I feel like we're building like my brain thinks that this utopian stuff we're doing is so that people can be independent from systems that like destroy us and stuff. So like I feel like communities are happening under this, and people are going to have to learn how to relate deeply in order for it to like be safe, for their like physiological needs to be actually met, and etc. I don't know.
This is really amazing. I think these questions are hard to answer because it feels like a very deep self-knowledge work to answer all of this in a personal level. Like, what are all of your boundaries based on these divisions that you put here?
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes to a point where it is the challenging point of DAOs. I think Chase Chapman made a tweet about this yesterday, that the main tools in DAOs are not softwares, but is therapy. and and that feels very right. Like, if everyone had a moment for looking into themselves and having some guidelines for, yeah, very personal things. So it's definitely a challenge. I wonder how we could approach something like this, because I believe it would have an impact in the system in general if people were more aware of this. I don't know. Does anyone has thoughts?
When we talked about the social layer being more important, I had a note down at the bottom because one of the words that came up was presence in our mission. And I don't get a sense of presence in an embodied way from the container energetically. I get a sense of presence in the technology. Like, it's people are working on it, things are happening. But I don't get an actual sense of presence typically from people in digital spaces unless we're like, I mean, we're all pretty like, right now on this is some like thick stuff. But I don't get a sense of like general grounded in spaces, in the token engineering commons or on digital spaces, kind of anywhere, because I don't think people are grounding themselves or know how to stay present or not disassociate or maybe fidget. Like, I don't think a lot of people actually have a lot of the tools or awareness to know to like dim lights or put a weird fucking light on you if it makes you feel better. Like, just all these little weird things. And we talk about when I say presence, I'm like, cool. So like grounding, and then how do we teach a culture of embodiment? So that's maybe all of this ties into like teaching consent, teaching embodiment, and offering opportunities for people to. I don't know, this is my life work. My dream is to just like open up my phone one day and just like I'll have a bunch of meetings where I just like meet with random people at any given time, and we're like unpacking like this stuff and ourselves and our identity. And I guess that's kind of like all what I'm like leading toward in all of the work that I do. So I don't think this stuff is like too far out there. I actually think this stuff's pretty easy. I do it all the time with people. That's why I'm late to like things, because I'm having deep dive conversations with people out of random, unpacking their lives. But I think this stuff is totally attainable. We just have to create some sort of container for it. I was thinking about the book club. I know there's a new book club coming around. I'm trying to figure out how to engage myself or plug in to like suggest things like this, but I don't really know how to. I kind of only know how to access things that are already in the commons and help. But I'm also not seeing the things that I actually want to be doing in the commons. So I float around and I'm like, bah! But I'm still not in the places I actually want to be. So I'm too working on my boundaries in that regard. Yeah.
So Aloysius, I think this is very exciting to me. I think it's really cool that you're digging into this. I would have never thought to even jump into this, in a context like this. But I think it's really important. I feel like what we're building here is like the next generation community, right? Like this is there are people for whom the TEC is just like something they come to every once in a while, and they maybe affiliate a little bit, and then they work with other DAOs and blah. But then there are other people who are like, this is like where I want to be. Like these are people I really want to hang with, and I feel like one of the reasons that these kinds of entities will succeed over the long term is because of things like this. In other words, I think that there is a community that's like the platform, and the working groups sit on top of that platform, and so that's where we get work done. And so those are when we develop, we're like doing professional development in those contexts around, like in the working groups. But in the community, I think that actually there is the potential for people to come here and not just develop professionally, but also personally. And I feel like the organizations that get that right are going to be huge beacons of light. Like they're going to be major attractors. They'll be around like an MVV, and the idea that I can go to an MVV with people who care about this MVV with me, and we can grow together, is really cool. And I think that that's the way. Like that's the way this is going to be, like the corporate world and all that kind of stuff. So, and I guess the other thing, I really do believe in like development. That was like that paper I wrote, the TEC and its people, was like I was trying to like, what if we were to be a deliberately developmental DAO? What would that look like? And I think what you're hitting on here is like a really key aspect, which is just like this is an autonomous organization, like decentralized autonomous organization, you're defining like what the autonomy is for the agents within that organization, the people, right? It's like the autonomy is the boundary around that person, and how do we operate in a way where we're not poking into other people's boundaries without permission, right? So like I think that's part of what you're getting at here, right? It's like the culture is how do we do that gracefully with each other. So I love this. Thank you for bringing this up. It's inspiring. It's cool.
It's silly sometimes when I like, so I'm in this container where I think that people are designing this utopia, the future that's going to be better for everybody. And there's this thing that happens where I lose my thought because I have ADHD. I totally dropped it. Oh, I lost it. I'm just gonna have to let that one go. It might come back. Sorry.
You were saying designing the containers or like the communities for the future. Does that pick up the thread?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, something about how like people are working together well here, and I have a sense that people are getting along and there's not conflict, but we also have this open container and no awareness to boundaries. So the dramatic thing that I see, because I've got this like logistics and operations brain, is I imagine people coming straight out of capitalism into the server and still having all that residue on them, right? Being like performative or trying to seeing people in positions of power on the screen and trying to figure out who they need to network with to like all the things that people do on the back end to get their needs met. I want to have people like grounded and be like, let's figure out how to help you orient and navigate around this space, as opposed to like the hyper fixation and hyper individualism that's like in our culture, that it gets extractive with time and with energy and emotion and attention in little nuanced ways that we don't notice. And I think if we're able to track those things on our own, our impact will be better for ourselves and for others.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. That's the whole purpose of this working group, actually. It's to assist on this impact of obsolete behavior and into this shift from obsolete behavior to behavior that can sustain the new systems that we're building. And such a big part of this is this embodiment. I'm actually drafting for a few months now, and a residency I wanted to propose that's called Embodiment Practices for Complex Thinkers. I'd love to chat with you on that. Maybe we can make something happen. I've been kind of stuck on it. And we only have 10 minutes left, and I would love to pass it to Antti for showing us the clarity board he put up and some of the work we can do there.
Thanks. Yeah, just before that, I loved what you all were talking about. I guess I didn't have much comments because um, I have yet to learn a lot about particularly that stuff. But yeah, let's get into to this. I'll share my screen. So I made a quick base for Softgov, and I thought I'd share around just well how I think we could work that out. And so first of all, we have the weekly that I think is really cool, where we have like we could have the weekly meetings agenda here and just go through them. Um, uh, yeah, but, pretty much that. And for those who are not used to, who doesn't know Clarity, one thing I think is really cool about that is that we can have the agenda here and put up some points and then convert those points right into tasks, into actionable tasks or projects or whatever. Uh, and yeah, so yeah, that's one thing. Then we have the projects. So they have initiatives, projects, and then tasks. So the first initiative I put up was the cultural extremes we talked. It was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, which consists of 5 projects, which each one can have their own subtasks and everything there. Um, and then I still don't know like what are the best practices to go about Clarity, but I thought we could have one group. We have the text of Go group, which is like the common group for the base, and then we can have one group for each initiative, so they can put up their own nodes and work together and build the whole thing together. And um, I don't know. I thought I was going to take more, but that's pretty much it. If anyone has any questions, so I don't know. If I went too fast.
That's really cool. Thank you. Yeah, one thought only I have, and also I was chatting about this with Tim, that I feel like if every working group just uses a completely different tool or um, has a different practice for like the overall things. I think. Can you mute NT, please?
Sorry.
No problem. Thank you. Yeah, if every working group is using something totally different and we lose track of ZenHub, for example, I think it would be challenging for us, at least for now. And I think clarity could kind of like make us lose ZenHub somehow, because it would create siloed pockets of work management, while the ZenHub board is like more a general one that everyone has access to. So I think what would be great to use Clarity for would be, for example, for the work streams that you set up, like the cultural ones, like the race and gender, the open source, the all of those. Can you open those ones? I forgot which ones are them.
Yeah, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, there, personal development, psychology, open source culture. Like, I think this would be so great for new members to jump in and start sharing like thoughts, maybe links, and everything into those pockets. So we would have organized work streams. I'm not sure. What do you guys think?
So this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, because we've been doing this we've been using Clarity in the Writers Guild for about a month, I guess. And yeah, I think it's important for us to be able to embrace really good new tools and not get too locked into old ones that we decided on earlier. But then we have to be able to integrate, right? Otherwise, we're just going to have like this big fragmented mess. So the Clarity is working on GitHub integration. So it could be that GitHub becomes like in like software development, like they talk about, I don't know, this software architect once explained to me this idea of God's truth. That's like one, there's like the data is stored in one place. That one place, that's God's truth. And it can be, it can show up in lots of other places, but there's like one place where the actual truth lies. And so maybe GitHub is that repository for us, but we have it show up in different applications. And so I'm in conversation with Richie, who's the founder at Clarity, and I'm gonna add, like, I think that GitHub integration it's definitely in their plans. It's like on their priority list. But I think for us as a community, like it may actually be really, really important. And until that happens, I think there may be some ways of like having interfaces where we use the codes from ZenHub, like the unique identifier, and just make sure that if there's a project that is really completely contained within a working group, then maybe you don't worry about it as much. But if there's any points of contact with other working groups or the community as a whole, you have to have like an identifier for a ZenHub issue. I'm not sure exactly how that would work, but I think that there probably will be some ways of making this more interoperable, but we gotta look at it.
Um, I certainly agree with what Gideon's saying. It's also too early on to decide if Clarity is what we are going to end up using or whatever, or if Clarity is going to replace anything. But it's definitely important to be open to, especially to changing tools. I think, um, what gets me more excited about Clarity is the fact that we wouldn't longer need to have Google Docs, Gitbook, and then SendHub, and a bunch of different tools and a bunch of different documents for each working group. And we can just go to a single interface and interact with everything at the same time. Uh, I'm still not sure how that's going to work out, or if, I don't know, if the GitHub implementation is going to be the way we think it's going to be. It may be, it may not work for us, but I don't know. It's probably a hard topic to touch on, but I wouldn't like to be sort of compelled to using SendHub. Just, I mean, I know SendHub adds a lot to how the TEC operates, but it's also I don't know if that's only me, but it's also really hard to. It's been really hard to sort of keep myself into the TEC with probably 10 to 15 tabs open every time. It's confusing, it's overwhelming, it's just hard. So that's, you know. We could also work it out. Like, I don't know. I think what you said was is a great idea. We could just use Clarity for more like from a specific tasks, and then put on same hub up something like that groups together. Um, Something like, well, I don't know. I was thinking about L2s and Ethereum. That L2s just put up to Ethereum like a resume of a certain block, and we could sort of use SendHub that way. At least for now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that sounds good. Let's try to integrate more with it. Maybe next meeting we can have the agenda here and try to create issues from some topics.
And just really quickly, I just sent a note to Richie from Clarity to ask him about um, GitHub integration and timelines. So we'll see what he comes back with.
Also, I want to say that I just published in the TEC forum the third Graviton training study plan. So yeah, you all can see the content and also register. So and also thank everyone who helped in that.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I would love to have this boundary as like a work thread, Aloysius, if you think we could do that. Maybe we can create some types of like practices, workshops, or and maybe leaning more towards the async. Like, how can we propose activities for people that they could like maybe even fill in their own time, you know? And we could gather some time to talk about how they felt going through that. A way that we can spread more the message to more people and they can have like an assessment and then bring back some type of feedback.
Yeah. Another thing I'm gonna start too, I thought of it on my walk earlier today, was I have this thing for decolonizing NVC. It's this workbook, and it's got this thing where you take in something you're exposed to, like something happens, and then you're supposed to reflect on it, but it has like this framework. And I was like, man, you know what I need, and why I always tried to get a therapist was because they have all these tools that I could use on my own that help me like unpack something. So on my walk, I was like, oh, I'm gonna take all these tools that I have and put them all in one place. I want to create a Miro board that is like I can pull it out of my pocket and it's like all the things I use for unpacking shit. Um, that's something that I want to like work on. Feels like it could be mutually worked on in this area.
Yeah, sounds nice. We're a minute over the top of the hour, but that could be something you put in the personal development track here. That would be really great on Clarity. Thanks for setting that up, NT. Thank you, everyone, for contributing today. Thanks, Aloysius, for presenting. And I will see you next week. Let's continue chatting.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.